Welcome to the Let's Talk Crypto podcast, where we discuss the latest Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset news.
Hey everybody, hope you're all well. The date is the 15th of July 2019, and this is episode 17 of Let's Talk Crypto. I am your host, Wes Carlson, and I'm joined by my co-host, Slava. Today we have an informal chat about the latest run-up in the Bitcoin price, the current pullback, what may have caused it from a fundamental perspective, what may have caused it from a technical analysis perspective, the latest news doing the rounds in the crypto space, legislation, and we also touch on the mythical alt season. As always, if you enjoy this episode, we would appreciate if you would give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. If you are on iTunes, please take a minute to give us a review. It helps the podcast get noticed, which means we can get Bitcoin in front of more people. We also have some exciting new program formats that we'll be trying out soon, so stay tuned. Okay, I've said enough. Let's get going. All right. Hey man, how are you? Good?
Hi Wes, doing great. Hello everyone.
Yeah. What a crazy week of price action with Bitcoin, yeah?
Oh, it's I hope it found its level of support. Remember yesterday when we were chatting, I said that I would assume that the prices are gonna fall. Thankfully my assumption was correct.
Were you trading before this leg down?
I actually honestly looking at the chart assumed that the massive correction that we saw today is gonna happen earlier. And I kind of look at the chart and I can see on the 15-minute chart, I can see that the momentum was slowing down and the bounces from 11,000 were getting shallower. So I really expected it to happen a little bit earlier, but it did happen, not when I expected it, but I guess that's what
that's the market, you know what I mean? It's,
yes.
You expect it to move 10, it will go 20. You expect it to drop by 5, it will go 10, you know. If everybody's thinking the same thing, what the market likes to do is just go a little bit past that or a little bit under that. It's never, you know, the market isn't there to give away free gifts and make everyone wealthy.
I'm learning the hard way that it's very expensive to prove to the market that you're right. So
exactly, and you know, I think that's one of the main things, you know, for beginner traders and myself included, was that you don't have to be right all the time. You just need to be right more often than you're wrong, and you need to learn how to perhaps let the winners ride and cut the losers as fast as possible. And an edge can be as small as winning 51% of the time, and you can still make good money and make a living out of trading. And I think one of the traps that people fall into is wanting to be right, you know, and so they take a trade trying to prove that they're right. And when the trade goes the wrong way, they think it's going to turn again, and they hold a losing trade. And they hold it a little bit longer, hoping it's going to turn, and it doesn't turn. And they end up taking big substantial losses, and those add up over time. So yeah, it's a funny thing, the market, but can really be a cruel teacher. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the price action that's coming through now, definitely advise anybody who's learning from an educational point of view, not financial advice, but to take a step back, zoom out, and look at higher time frames. And if one did do that over the last couple weeks, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, one would have noticed that we had candles which closed on a weekly chart that were extremely bearish. Something we call a shooting star, another one which is nearly a doji after that, and the shooting star was on very high volume. And then we've had continuation off that shooting star, and the price action is moving down. Now, what's happened in between on the lower time frames is people have been buying and selling in the wrong areas and getting chopped up. So when the price drops, they all start shorting, and then the price goes up and they all get liquidated. And as it's going up, they all start buying, and then the price drops and they all get liquidated. So, you know, if one had just taken the higher time frame, looked at the weekly, one could see that this drop was not inevitable, but highly likely. And, you know, nothing's for certain. I mean, the price could just turn around now for absolutely no reason at all and go up to 20K. And, you know, we don't need to explain the market. The market's always right. It doesn't need to have an explanation about it. But that's, I think, is human nature. We cause and effect. We like to find a reason for everything. And yeah, and especially with new traders and people dabbling in the market, it's definitely one of the things that they try and do is find an explanation for everything. When sometimes, quite simply, there's no explanation. Or if there is one, you're not going to know it. And neither does most of the other participants in the market. One of the things that I've seen blaming this drop has been the Trump tweet. Did you see that?
I did see that. Actually, was a number of tweets that he dedicated to how great the US dollar is comparing to Bitcoin, which has no value absolutely whatsoever. And so it was very interesting because Trump is known to have what seems to be like a spontaneous tweet storms. Or different questions.
That's a nice way of putting it. Nice way of putting it.
Or different questions. But I was just listening to someone in the morning, and his point of view is that that might be a strategic move from the Trump administration or Trump himself. Why would he pay attention to something like Bitcoin if he doesn't see a threat in it? So, it's again a matter of interpretation, but it was really interesting to see how the news interact with the market. The other big announcement that we've had is, I don't know if you saw it, is the draft of the bill, which basically prohibits large corporations such as Facebook, Google, and similar tech giants from creating a private cryptocurrency, which would act as a store of value or a method to transfer value. And so that was another big news, I think, that might have affected the market and pulled the prices down.
Yeah, it could have, but I mean, again, I still think it's human nature to try and pin these things onto sort of news events and things like that. But going back to the Trump tweets and that, isn't it ironic that he says Bitcoin has no value, it's money out of thin air type of thing, when the Federal Reserve is basically that? I mean, what is the US dollar backed by? Nothing. Thin air. They can just print as much as they like. With all the quantitative easing they're doing, they're printing trillions of dollars. How ironic can you get? It's incredible, and I find that the tweet itself is probably quite positive in the sense that, well, it means that it is significant enough, the impression that Bitcoin or the crypto space is making, that it warranted a tweet from the President of the United States. Now, the last time, if my memory serves me well, that a US president mentioned Bitcoin or spoke about it like that on such a public forum was when Obama spoke about Bitcoin being like a Swiss bank account in a person's pocket. So, this is only probably the second time that I know of that a US president has mentioned Bitcoin and actually dedicated a few tweets to it. So I find that to be quite a positive thing. I mean, a few years ago in, let's say 2012, 2013, to get one article or two articles in a whole year that mentioned Bitcoin in mainstream media, like you would jump up and down, run around naked and be so excited that Bitcoin was mentioned. And here you have like the US president dedicating like a whole bunch of tweets to it. I think that's pretty cool actually. Yeah, okay, the content is a bit negative, but maybe your friend was right, strategically, maybe this is going to lead to something else. Maybe this is just warning shots. Maybe they're going to try something in terms of legislation very soon. Who knows? This administration is quite sporadic and can take people by surprise sometimes by their actions, good and bad. And who knows? And this bill that's come out, that to me is incredible.
I just had this idea, Wes. What is incredible to me, the most incredible thing is that legislators come up with ideas. They form bills. There's nothing unusual about this. But I just had this thought that the hearings with Facebook and Amazon, as far as I can tell, are scheduled for this week. So the bill, the attitude from regulators in the United States kind of clearly shows through that bill, because they have not had hearings yet, but they already have a version of a bill that is fairly anti decentralized cryptocurrency, decentralized money. Do you find that interesting that they have not heard the other side and what they're planning to do with Libra project, but they already have someone has that document intact?
Yeah, no, I find that incredible. I find it very disingenuous. I mean, they basically have drafted a bill which should have been drafted. I'm not saying this particular bill should have been drafted, but a bill that should be drafted after consulting with the relevant stakeholders. Surely, you know. It just shows that whatever it is their intentions are is like almost a foregone conclusion, and that the hearing is just window dressing. I doubt that anything that's said or recorded in that hearing is going to make much of a difference in terms of what the bill is. It's already written. You know, okay, there can be some amendments and things like that, but it's already written, the writing's on the wall type of thing. Yeah, I don't know if I would even apportion any price drop to the bill. I mean, if you think about it, it's probably a positive thing that the government is showing their hand, you know, showing their true feelings about it, and showing that they've actually got a bit of fear for some of these big companies that could start their own sovereign currencies, and you know the ripple effect that might cause. Like we mentioned on the previous episodes, when we were talking about the Facebook Libra coin, Google won't just sit there and let Facebook rule the world in terms of currency and transfer of value. And what, will Google also eventually have to end up using Facebook coin? No way. They're going to also want to start their own coin. Amazon, these are big companies. They don't want to be ruled by another company. Apple won't want to be beholden to Amazon coin or Facebook coin. They, in their own right, you know, would like to have control of their own sort of financial asset of sort. And I think that really scares the US, and I'm sure it scares many other countries, you know, because the ripple effect after that would be probably lead to a whole bunch of currencies by big tech companies and sovereign nation state backed currencies collapsing. That could be the future we could end up with. I don't know if anybody's talking about that, but private big tech money and fiat based sort of nation state money falls away.
Yeah,
So
that would be an interesting future to say the least. Not sure which one would be better,
yeah.
the government controlled money or the tech giant controlled money. Because at the end of the day, none of them are decentralized, and someone has control over your assets, over your savings, over your money. That's probably not the best choice option for many people out there.
You know the saying, power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something
Mhm.
like that. I mean, it's just too much control in the hands of these tech giants. Can you imagine? Facebook's got everything on you, literally everything on billions, 2 billion, maybe 3 billion, I don't know how many people, but they've got everything. And now you're going to have their financial transactions, the records, what they spend money on. You're going to have a dystopian future, really something which I don't think would be positive for us at all. I almost want to say just thank goodness for Bitcoin. At least we do have an opt-out of that potential future. Now, the fact that they're banning, this is quite telling, that they want to try and ban companies of over a certain value from creating currencies or cryptocurrencies or whatever they call it in the document, is also quite telling. Like, if that's what they want to do, and that's the parameters which they set for enacting or triggering the application of the law, then it also tells you that they don't know how they could do that for Bitcoin. How could they do it for Bitcoin? How would they trigger that? The only thing they couldn't literally say, Bitcoin, you can't transact anymore or anything. But what they could do is they could put an outright ban on XYZ companies transacting in Bitcoin, to make it almost like a prohibition, like with alcohol and other things that they've banned in the past, or drugs or marijuana and things like that. I think they would that would just push Bitcoin further underground, but minor setback, but I think it would thrive in that environment, because it would become the de facto go-to place for people who don't want to transact in surveillanced, controlled, government-backed money.
Yes, and I think it's also fair to point out that the United States probably the least homogeneous country on earth, where you have different states with different legislatures, and there's also federal government. I would like to point out that there's a number of unicorn companies in America that are based on blockchain and crypto. So I certainly think that some of the jurisdictions within the United States do like, to a certain extent, cryptocurrency and accept it as a valid form of business. Let's look at Coinbase. It was one of the first companies to go through Y Combinator, one of the first crypto companies to go through Y Combinator a number of years ago. And I believe its valuation is over 1 billion. We also have Ripple, also in California. So California, being the 10th largest economy, does really appreciate the technological advances, and it seems like a lot of successful blockchain cryptocurrency companies are based there. So it kind of reminds me, Wes, of over around 2 years ago. The president of Russia met with Vladimir Putin met with Vitalik Buterin during an economic forum, and so everyone was very, excited about cryptocurrency being acknowledged in Russia, and it was generally a positive sign. However,
Yeah.
Didn't turn out to be as great as everyone expected. Russia's kind of on a neutral side relative to crypto, comparing to other countries. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how it all plays out. If only we would know
Yeah.
where to put buy and sell orders for cryptocurrency and what is relevant in our lives.
Absolutely. You made a good point there about sort of the US having different states with different policies, different laws and everything, and having their own take on the whole crypto thing. A good example is, I don't know if you know Caitlin Long. She's basically a crypto Bitcoin advocate, and she has been working very hard in the state of Wyoming. And Wyoming is now becoming like the Delaware of digital asset law. So basically, they've already enacted 13 blockchain enabling laws. So it's like the only US state to have a comprehensive, welcoming legal framework that enables blockchain technology people to come set up companies there. They're actually encouraging it and fostering it there. So on one hand, you've got a state there in the US, right? They've enabled 13 blockchain laws, which are specific to blockchain, which encourages them to come set up there. It's got the legal framework, everything. It enables people to bring capital, to employ, to put jobs, all of that in their state, right? And then you have the US president sending out a tweet like that. So yeah, it's quite contradictory. And it was interesting, even she responded, because she's been a big proponent of this and has been receiving support from a lot of the Bitcoin community, including people like Trace Mayer and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see her reply to the Trump tweet, telling Trump to come have a look at Wyoming, to see how it could be done, and how it is being done, and how far ahead they are over the federal level side of things. What's more likely in terms of this price movement is that, I mean, we've had a hell of a run up from 3,300. It's been 5-6 months of just up price, just kept going. At every level people thought, okay, now it's going to come back down, and it's just kept going. And I think it is realistic to assume that there's been some profit taking near the top, and then you've had some more dip buyers who've brought it back up, and again profit taking, and then dip buyers, but now this time it's not holding up. And that type of pattern is a classic Wyckoff distribution pattern. So basically what you find is that now the sellers are starting to outweigh the buyers, and the price drops and it gets marked down. Then you have another a phase of buying and selling, and basically it just chops up the people on lower time frames. And then again, the straw breaks the camel's back and you have another markdown in price. But if we really zoom out on the chart, we still are really in a bull sort of trend at the moment. I don't want to call it a complete bull market, but it is a strong bull trend. On many of the time frames, higher time frames, you still are sort of in an uptrend, higher high, higher low type of thing. Although things have swung around and we can have pullbacks, just like we did in 2015 and 2016, leading up to the 2017 blow off top. We did have parabolic runs, and we had 30 to 40%, some 20, 30, and 40% pullbacks, retracements. But we still up, everybody was horrified when we hit 1,000 or 1,200 again after being at $300-400, and we pulled back to like 800, like in one day. It was quite scary. I was actually in Cape Town at the moment, and I had my mobile phone on me, and I had like alerts set, and it literally went off 10 times in the space of like 1 hour, and I was watching this Bitcoin value lose 10% on each, or 5% on each ping. These pullbacks happen, people forget, and now everybody's gone into negative mode. Oh, we're going down to $1,000 or $3,000, and that's like, no. There's a lot of price levels to chew through before then. People who'd missed out on buying at, let's say, 8,000 or 9,000, they're going to be waiting right there. They're going to want to buy below 10. And if there isn't enough of them, then it will go down a little bit further, and so on, until it finds that space where the investors see value, and it will get marked back up again. If that's not the case, then we'll know long before the time, because we'll see a downtrend. You'll start seeing lower highs and lower lows, and that will spread to the higher time frames. But for now, on the monthly basis, we've formed a higher high. So now we need to set in a higher low. And then if we do that and we continue up, that's now on a monthly time frame, an uptrend, it will be confirmed. But it's a natural process in the market that we need to set in a higher low now. So we've done the higher high. We need to come back down and test to see if everybody in the market is thinking the same thing. Are we going up or are we going down? And so it has to happen. You can't just go up in a straight line all the way to $1 billion. There will be a pullback test. If that level holds, then we continue up again. Then okay, we're in an uptrend on the monthly time basis.
Wes, if I look at the Google Trends chart for Bitcoin, I can clearly see that the consumer retail interest is much lower today than it used to be in 2017. For instance, with the peak interest, the Google Trends shows interest for retail consumers. It peaked at 100, and right now it's at around 16. So what do you think?
What number is it at? Sorry,
so right now, the number of searches that people do is around 16 relative to 100,000. And that poses a very interesting question. What do you think is driving the growth in 2019 comparing to 2017? Because it's obviously not retail investors. I would think so. What is your take on that?
Well, before we spoke to Maddie Greenspan from eToro on the last episode, in my mind, I had it that it was institutional. It was, large trading shops that were pushing the price up, because I think the market just got into such a negative position mentally, from a sort of psychological point of view. Everybody was waiting for $1,000 now, and I think that it was primed for a bounce that we had, to really put everybody on the wrong side of the trade. And I honestly thought that it was the big trading firms, the quants and all these guys, the big wallets that put in a floor and they mark price up very quickly, trapping a lot of people. However, when I spoke to Maddie Greenspan, he was remarking that he thinks that a lot of the cause of price moving up is actually could be retail, but more retail in terms of experienced crypto holders. So people who've been through a couple bull and bear markets, who recognized that, it was time to move the price up. I don't know, nobody really knows for sure, only the people, themselves. But I think it could be a balance of the two. I think that perhaps smart money in terms of, and trading firms like some of the bigger quant firms and trade shops probably marked price up, and all the experienced hodlers and larger players who own crypto businesses and things like that, some of the more sort of well-known names that in the space, I think they recognized what was going on and joined, and that caused further markups and short squeezes along the way. I don't think retail has been fully on board, because I've had a lot of friends that contact me, and people, really good friends. I'm not talking about crypto space friends and things like that. Friends from, from a young kid and that who missed perhaps the parabolic run of 2017 and have always asked me, is it time to buy? Is it time to buy? Is it time to buy? And most of them haven't bought. Most of them still haven't bought. They haven't bought because they still have that fear that it's going to drop back to 3 or worse. They're not 100% convinced yet. And I classify them as retail, complete retail. I mean, we all retail, to be honest, but really new retail. The ones who do FOMO in at the top, and they're not FOMOing in. So I agree with that Google Trends indicator that this hasn't been a complete retail-driven event. And I haven't seen the complaints of sign-ups and people not being able to get into Coinbase or some of these bigger exchanges, or can't get their KYC. I haven't seen the bottlenecks that we saw in 2017.
To add to that, I think there's also a difference between the amount and volume of news coverage from mainstream media of the Bitcoin run right now comparing to 2017. I do think there's a lot more hype being spread around by the mainstream media back in 2017. It's probably fueled interest from for a lot of new people to come into the space. And then they got disillusioned by the high volatility because they bought at the top or closed there to 20,000. And it's not the case right now. I don't see a lot of news articles being published by Forbes or similar magazines, journals about what's happening in the industry. So I do see your point that, and I agree with it, that it's probably a combination of both, of probably institutional investors stepping in, but also the retail investors who have experience in joining the ranks and taking advantage of the market.
Yes, absolutely. And let's not forget that although Bitcoin has got a bigger market cap than all the other cryptos, I think it's almost at 70% dominance. I think it's 60-something percent, 68% or something. It still is, in comparison to some of the markets that these bit larger trading firms deal with, it still is just a drop in the bucket in terms of liquidity. So, to take control of the Bitcoin price, and I know people don't want to hear this, but to take full control of the Bitcoin price and mark it up and create a bit of momentum takes far less money than moving, some of these highly liquid currencies around the world and companies and stocks and things like that. So there is the opportunity, and I've used that term loosely, the opportunity for some of these large players in the legacy space to really make some moves for now in Bitcoin, whilst it still is quite illiquid compared to legacy markets and that. I wouldn't be surprised and if you had some of these larger trading firms, and you could probably put it down to a handful of them, if not one or two, that really initiated or gave this price movement the momentum it needed to get where it's got now. And you're probably finding that now it's time to take profit and distribute, on all the people who are buying. Unfortunately, people who are buying over 10K, So, yeah, I still do think from a technical point of view, nothing's perfect, but from a technical point of view, I've seen the things that satisfy me to say that I think we are in a general uptrend. I am happy to relinquish that idea if we had to break below, I would say, 7,000, maybe 6.5. I'd be happy to throw away that idea and completely change my mindset. But until then, I maintain that I think we are in a general uptrend, and I'm happy for us to go all the way back down to 6.5, 7,000. As long as we don't breach that high volume and velocity, I think that we have the potential to bounce again and continue to new highs. I don't anticipate the drops being as big and as severe as what we've experienced during the bear market, where we reached sort of plateaus and just plummeted like a piano falling off a building. I think that now it will be more constructive, sort of dips, and like even today's price action, we've come all the way down to below 10,000, down to 9,850 on some exchanges, and already right now I think we are back up to 10,362. So $400-$500 swings. So yeah,
the market certainly looks much healthier with what's happening right now comparing to 2017. I saw data today, and I believe it basically showed how much time did it take in 2017 to double the value of Bitcoin. And I think the last kind of peak moment when it reached 20,000, like 18 to 20,000, it took like 10 minutes. And then, as you said, the whole thing fell like a piano off the roof. And this kind of correction looks much healthier because there's no massive drops, and just has more potential. To me, it looks like a spring which is gaining momentum, which is suppressed, and then we'll see what happens after that. Is it going to go up, or is it going to kind of collapse on itself and fall? But
yeah.
Anyways, it's healthier, and
you can't. You need price to go up, come back, test the level below, and make sure that okay, we're going up. If it just keeps going up, it can come down just as quickly. You need to create those price support and resistance levels going up. And right now on the weekly time frame, if we had to come all the way back down to 7.5, I'd be happy with that, as long as we don't breach that sort of area, and on a closing basis start breaching below 7.5. I think we're healthy. We've come back, we've tested the level, and we'll continue going back up. Not a foregone conclusion, but that would be a healthy sign to me. Even a drop down to there and then continuing upwards again. Doesn't mean we'll go straight back up. We could still, bounce around between 7.5 and 10,000 for 3, 4, 5 months. I don't know, but it would give support to that price level that buyers are happy to step in there and buy at that price. At the end of the day, if nobody's willing to buy, price will fall. So, you need to find where those levels are. It can't just carry on going up. I mean, even in 2017. One stage we got up to 7,600 approximately. We dropped all the way back down to 5,200. And, as a percentage basis, that is what, 20, 30%, 30% approximately, maybe a bit more, 35%. But it was constructive. It didn't break any further price levels below it. It continued upwards. Buyers stepped in, saw value, bought the dip, and price continued up. I think that if anything, we need to, because it sets in people's minds once it drops, like, okay, is that how far we're going? And then as soon as price starts moving up again, you'll see the momentum build again because people have confidence in that level. They're like, okay, this level's holding, I can buy now.
There's another very interesting question which is kind of bothering me, the difference between the way the market is working today versus 2017. In terms of altcoins in relationship to Bitcoin, I do distinctly remember that they used to oscillate around Bitcoin as, for example, a moon is oscillating around the sun. So sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. But I think there is a new trend on the market for the last couple of months, for the last month and a half, I believe, where all the altcoins are systematically losing value relative to Bitcoin. And as you pointed out, Bitcoin, as the result of this, Bitcoin is increasing its market capitalization, market dominance. It's interesting to think about it because from the fundamental perspective, there's a number of things that can affect a change in behavior. First, we don't really have ICOs anymore. Exchanges like Binance are really rigorous and careful as far as creating token sales. I think they create something like 1 token sale per month right now, because they realize that it takes due diligence, and if they don't do due diligence, Binance, the exchange's reputation might suffer. The certain regulators stepped in, and that stopped the craziness that kind of led to the whole boom and consequently bust in 2017. But also, the fundamental question is, will altcoins see the light of the day again, or are they doomed to fall lower and lower comparing to Bitcoin, and potentially cease to exist or find a very small niche somewhere at the bottom of the pyramid, whereas Bitcoin is the dominant force and will stay at the top?
It's a good question. It's one that I do not know the answer to, but again, if you really think about it, perhaps 90% of them will disappear. Like Maddie was saying on the previous podcast, he was saying that, it's like a startup, a lot of the ICOs and that. I'm not talking about the scammy ones. I'm talking about just the genuine ones. It's like a startup. Most of them fail, and that's a part of innovation. People try things, they don't work, they fail. So I think that a lot of them will fail, and if not for any other reason, then they've got no utility. There's, the use case is strained. It's really trying to put a round peg in a square hole. And on top of that, I think the users and the people who are in the space now are a little bit more educated. A little time has passed. They've seen what 2017 was like. They've seen what some of these projects have done in the meantime, and how difficult it is even for the king, Bitcoin, to get adoption and get mainstream use and get acknowledged. So what chance does number 650 on the list stand? It's very, very unlikely that they're going to be able to compete by any stretch of the imagination. And I think a lot of people will be letting go of their sort of hopes and dreams over that special bag of coins that they're holding, and will start letting them go. I do think there's a lot of them that will survive, and there's a lot of good ones that have very niche sort of use cases, and I think those ones will be okay. But in respect of value to Bitcoin, I think they're going to take a bit of a strain in times like this, where you've got institutional money and you've got smart money as such pouring into Bitcoin with backed futures, LedgerX, ErinX, and all these things coming out. There's going to be a lot of attention on Bitcoin and its value proposition. And I think that is going to ultimately shine a light on the lack of value proposition of a lot of these coins.
Certainly, a lot of the projects which were launched during the ICO craze are useless. Another interesting observation that I had is, if we compare the top cryptocurrencies by market capitalization in 2017 relative to 2019 relative to 2017 and 18, the top positions are pretty much fixed right now. So we don't have any new coins just kind of coming into the sphere and coming into the market and taking the lead over the relatively well-established coins. So it's kind of also telling me that the market is going through consolidation phase, and there's less relative, I would say, liquidity, volatility, as far as the positions of top crypto go. But also, I do think that for the top 15, for the top 20, I personally hope that the trend will reverse, and that some of the coins would will have a faster growth rate than Bitcoin. And there's several reasons to that. First, competition is always great. Yes, Bitcoin is the oldest and the best cryptocurrency, most secure cryptocurrency on the stage. But a lot of the altcoins, which are in the top 20, have their own edge. And the second reason is that a lot of development is still happening in the industry within that top 20, top 15 cryptocurrencies. And so it'll be really, really interesting to see the price reflect that increase in value over time. So my personal hope and aspiration, and I do own altcoins, and the full disclosure, that the trend of Bitcoin getting more and more dominance will uh, reverse for some time.
Yeah, look, I think it does do it. It does gain in dominance, then then the altcoins come back. But I think that this will be a bit of a washout at the moment. I'm talking about the smaller ones, not so much the larger projects. Although ETH BTC, in terms of that pair, right now is the lowest it's been in years. I'm not talking about ETH dollar, ETH BTC, and that's a bit of a scary trend, but that can quickly reverse. It's just going to depend, like I said earlier, on how the market values these projects. Is it based on their utility and them scaling up and improving their sort of networks and their use cases and things like that? Or will the market value sort of the more Bitcoin-esque type of value, where it's store of value, the institutional players are getting involved and things like that? I don't know. Time will tell. I think that a lot of the smaller projects that have niche use cases, people are going to start now to try and build them on Bitcoin, on layer 2, layer 3 solutions. So a lot of these tokens that, for example, talk about speed of transactions, I think a lot of them are going to suffer, because on top of the Lightning Network, you're going to be able to do a lot of the things which these tokens want to do. I don't know how many thousands of transactions per second. So that sort of use case is going to go. Now we talk about the privacy coins. And okay, well, with the Lightning Network, with Schnorr and Taproot and all these things coming out, are we going to be able to achieve what this specific coin's main value proposition is, but on top of a sturdy, well-known, liquid Bitcoin? And there again, I think Bitcoin's going to eat a bit of that. So that's my personal opinion. Could be totally wrong, but I think that is going to become more apparent to everybody as time goes by now, because a lot of the things that people have been talking about Bitcoin for years and years and years, saying, well, it will come to Bitcoin, people have got impatient and they've gone and built it in other projects. And their claim to fame has always been, we're faster than Bitcoin, or we can do this, but Bitcoin can't. We can do that, but Bitcoin can't. And Digibyte's a good example. It claims to have, a few different algorithms for consensus. It claims to be thousands or hundreds of thousands of transactions a second. It claims to be the most decentralized cryptocurrency. Goodness, it says a whole bunch of things. And I don't believe any of them to be true, but even if they are, most of the things now are becoming a reality on Bitcoin. So I think it's really only going to be the main ones that offer truly something different to what Bitcoin can do, or what can be built in the future on Bitcoin, that are going to survive and go up in value. Right now, what we see in the markets, I think, is just the price discovery. I think people aren't sure, just like we were saying. Are we going to have an alt season or not? And it's being reflected in the price at the moment. And I think it's going to shake out a lot of the ones that I think shouldn't be around.
That is a very interesting analysis. I definitely see the points that you made, and we'll see. The time will show whether any of the middle or smaller projects will hold value.
I don't see I don't see the bigger ones disappearing or anything. Let me be clear about that. I don't see Ethereum going away. Ethereum is a successful, as far as I'm concerned, is successful in terms of the amount of users it's captured, and developers, and the whole ecosystem around it is incredible in such a short space of time. So projects like that, if you have a strong enough community, which they do, I think will definitely be around in the future. It's the really small ones that we hardly hear of, that I think are going to disappear in the sense that they'll just become irrelevant.